What's up, everyone? It's your favorite marketer and podcast host. My name is Prit. I'm the author of Zero to Four Figures, a podcaster, YouTuber, Etsy shop owner, and a Skillshare teacher. All the links are in the description box below if you'd like to check it out. On this podcast, I bring in experts to give you actionable steps on various marketing, business, and mindset strategies to grow the business that you love. Today, I have one such expert with me, John Follis. Now, a little bit about John. John is one of the most awarded and honored advertising professionals in the US. His career started in New York, which is my favorite state in the world, working for the top ad agencies in the country. Then he co-founded his own Follis and Birdie, which became one of the most award-winning agencies in the US. He was one of the first to offer marketing consulting online via Skype in 2004. He was also one of the first to host a marketing podcast, which he did way back in 2006. And in 2013, he started Big Idea Video to help businesses with digital video. John's been invited to write for Ad Week, and he speaks at various venues, including the World Business Academy and the Yale Entrepreneurial Institute. He has also he is also taught at the top advertising schools in New York. John, how are we doing today?
I'm awesome, Prit. So nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I know that this is going to be one very, very exciting episode, guys. So stay tuned for the entire episode. John, can you tell us a little bit about how your journey started?
Well, it started with a lot of uncertainty. Unlike many people, I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. One thing I did know is that I had a lot of creative talent. My mom was an artist and a painter. So as a little kid, that was one area I really excelled in. Now, how to apply that creativity and artistic talent to a career was my question. And had it not been for one of my college instructors, I think it was my sophomore year of college, I was majoring in undecided and was taking a graphic design class. And about halfway through the class, she said, I'd like to talk to you after class, which is usually not a good thing to hear from an instructor, right? And she asked me an interesting question. She said, have you decided what you want to do with your life? And I said, well, I'm not sure, but why do you ask? And she said, well, because you're extremely talented. And I would just, if you're not sure, I would encourage you to pursue something that involves your creative talent. And she said, I don't think this is the school that you need to be at. So she said, I would really encourage you to go to a school that's got many more options of dealing with communication arts or visual, something that can allow you to use your talent. To which I replied, any ideas? And she said, Syracuse University, which happened to be where my dad graduated. So when I told this story to my dad, since he was paying for my education, he said, well, that sounds okay. So that's once I transferred to Syracuse. Syracuse has one of the top advertising programs. And again, I wasn't sure, but I talked to someone who said, listen, kid, if you're creatively talented and you want to make money, you go into advertising. And I said, okay. So that's, and I have to tell you, Prit, it did not start very well because the first advertising course I took, I did not get along with the instructor.
Oops.
I thought he was an arrogant asshole. Can I say that on your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. He was from New York. He was from Madison Avenue. So, I looked at him like he was a rock star because he was at the point in his career where I hope to be someday. And my grades just were going downhill from the moment I started doing it. And I didn't really understand why. I just knew that I didn't feel any kind of a connection with him. I just thought he was kind of arrogant. And finally, toward the end unlike the first instructor previously who said that I had a lot of talent and really kind of complimented me, this guy was the opposite of that. And actually said that if I didn't drop the course, he was going to give me a bad grade. He said, I can't tell you what grade I'm going to give you, but you're not going to be happy about it. So I'm going to give you the option. This was maybe with 3.5 weeks to go in the class. he said, I'm going to give you an option to drop the course. And I'm not a quitter.
Yeah.
So having the instructor tell me that was like someone throwing a cold glass of water in my face. And I said, well, can I think about it? He said, yeah, you got 24 hours. And I was, my head was spinning as I walked out the door. He goes, and one more thing, kid, do not go into advertising.
Oh,
So, not what you want to hear when you finally have decided on a major and you're
yeah.
halfway through your junior year of college and it's very expensive tuition and all this stuff. So fortunately, I decided I did drop the course. I mean, I didn't really feel like I had much of a choice at that point. But then the question was, what now? What do I do? I had no plan B. I was halfway through my junior year and I decided on advertising. So fortunately, the advertising curriculum had multiple teachers teaching the same course. So I said, let me try teaching the same basic advertising course with a different instructor.
Right.
And hope that there would be a different outcome, because I thought it had less to do about me than it had to do with him.
Right.
And fortunately, because I did that, that theory proved out to be true. I ended up getting like an A- in the class with a totally different instructor. And that was a very, very valuable lesson to learn at a very early point in my career, that I think everyone comes across people that are going to bolster you up, and they're going to be people that want to bring you down for whatever reason. You don't really know why, and you may never learn why, but for whatever reason, they just don't want to see you succeed. And you have to figure out, if you're really determined to succeed, you've got to figure out how to deal with people like that. And it's not often an easy thing to deal with, but because that happened so early on in my career, I think that really helped prepare me for what is a very, very competitive and challenging business to be in, especially in New York City, when you're working for these big agencies where there's a lot of big egos, big money,
Yes.
big egos, right?
Oh, that's amazing, John. I absolutely love that your story comes, from where your teacher pulled you aside and said, this is not the direction that you're supposed to go. You probably have another path for you. I really wish, I think for me personally, I did engineering and realized halfway that it was not for me, completed the degree, and then found my passion. And it was pretty late at that time. And if someone had told me that, Prit, you've got different creative interests, you've got a lot of strengths that may not be the strengths of people around you, you've got something there, I think my life would have taken a very different trajectory. And probably I would have come to this point a lot earlier. So I really liked that your teacher found that creative source in you, that creative talent in you, and asked you to hone it. That's beautiful.
The first
And
one, the first
kudos
teacher,
to them.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, the first teacher. And of course, I think, as you said, through my life as well, there have been people who told me you can't, and there have been people who told me that you absolutely can. And I think it's knowing what to believe, and forgetting that they also have their own insecurities, they have their own problems to be working through it. It's not necessarily on us to figure out why they're the way they're behaving, and it's on us to just continue our path for our passion. And when you were going through all that you were going through with the teacher, what was one thing that was running through your mind, especially when it came to pursuing your passion? Did you doubt it? Did you feel that maybe he's right? How did you overcome that feeling that,
Yeah.
okay, someone's having a problem with me and someone thinks I might not be able to make it? How did you overcome that thought process?
It was difficult because at Syracuse, they would get many instructors, not all the instructors, but many of the instructors who taught in the advertising program
Right.
would come up from New York City.
Mm,
So these weren't just like, people who taught but didn't actually work in the business. These were working professionals, many of them from Madison Avenue, New York City. So again, these guys were like rock stars to us. So we took what they said very seriously.
yes, absolutely.
And it was hard for me not to take it very seriously. The only thing I knew is that he was very arrogant as
Mm,
well. He would spend half the time flirting with all the cute girls in the class, and then actually ended up getting involved with one of them, which just kind of rubbed me the wrong way
Mm.
because it was became common knowledge about halfway through the semester that he was hooking up with one of my classmates, and she was getting amazing grades, of course, and I was
Oh.
not. So, I think that subconsciously fueled my animosity toward this guy. So it was just a strange situation. But to to answer your question, I took it very seriously.
Mm.
And I thank goodness that course was being taught by a different instructor
Mm.
because I needed to, it was a basic advertising course. I couldn't proceed
Mm.
with trying to get a degree if I didn't not only take the course, but do well in the class. I think
Yep.
you have to get at least a B or something like
Yeah.
that to continue on the curriculum. So my back was against the wall. I knew I had to do well, and fortunately I did. I mean, I really worked hard. But what really made the difference was this instructor was great. I had no problem. He was very encouraging, and I did extremely well. And it was just a totally different experience. So, again, I felt like I didn't have many options at that point. So there wasn't a lot to think about other than doing well in that class when I took it again. That was my main focus.
I think that trait of yours does shine through. As I read through your life story, I think the fact that you did push on despite naysayers around you. I mean, you did launch your podcast in 2006. Probably at that time, there were very few players in the area. I'm very sure a lot of people would have told you that the podcast is not going to work. This does not make sense. I don't know why you're doing it. And you also were one of the first few to offer marketing consulting online. And that was
Yeah.
in 2004. I mean, now as a marketing consultant who does work primarily online, for me, it's a norm. But for you back then, when the internet, everything was just picking up, how did you deal with naysayers at that time as well?
Well, contrary to what you just said, um, no one knew what a podcast was back then.
Okay. Okay.
So there weren't many people telling me I couldn't do it
Okay.
because this was in 2005 when I
Okay.
started, picking up on it.
Mm.
So, most of the people, if I did have a conversation about it, they would say, "What the hell's a podcast?" That's the response I would get,
I think that's a lot more tougher, right? I mean, it's one thing to have naysayers, but if
Nah,
people don't
nah,
even understand what a podcast
no,
is,
no, 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 no. I didn't take it that way. I
okay,
just
that's
took it the
good.
way that I knew something that they didn't,
Okay. Okay.
right? And I was excited about something that they knew nothing about.
Okay. Okay, that's a
So,
very good way of looking at it. Yes.
yeah, I mean, I'm just a very naturally curious person. And unlike many of my peers who would get how can I say it? Um they would their reaction to anything digital when things started shifting from traditional to digital, they would look at new things like that as they'd be afraid of it.
Yes,
They
absolutely.
didn't understand it.
Yes.
They would dismiss it.
Yes.
Many of them, this internet thing is a fad, right? I mean, I'm
Yes.
going way back.
Yes, yes.
And I didn't look at that way. My first website went up in 96,
Oh, wow.
before you were born.
No, no,
So,
I was very much there. I think I was 4 years old at that time.
okay, I was close. So, again, I didn't, I just knew that I got introduced to the internet in 94.
Okay.
And I didn't really understand what it was because it was such a mind-blowing
Yes.
thing, and, it was a very different experience. You'd have to wait 60 seconds or 2 minutes for something to come up on the screen and listen to all these strange beeping sounds before it did. So it was just kind of a bizarre, it was like Alice in Wonderland going down the rabbit
Yes.
hole, the first internet experience. But I just found it intriguing,
Mm.
and, the idea that you could have like your own online radio
Yes.
show, I just thought was the coolest thing. So, but I did have an ulterior motive,
Mm.
Prit. I was running my own business at the time, and my expertise is not in business development. I came up on the creative side
Right.
as a writer and a designer, and that's where my strength was. I learned a lot about marketing and business development from my business partner in the mid 90s when we had our business together, and he was one of the best sales guys I've ever worked with. So I learned a lot, but I had to figure out how to get on the radar screen of people that might consider hiring me.
Mm.
So my ulterior motive with the podcast was to create something. My mantra, and as a marketing person, you'll appreciate this. It's always better to attract your prospects than to chase after them, right?
Yes, I like a huge thumbs up. That is what I truly believe in. Absolutely. You nailed it, John. I please say it again.
People, yeah, there are a lot of people, they understand selling, they don't
Yes.
understand marketing. And the
Yes.
difference between marketing is trying to do stuff that makes people come to you.
Yes.
And the better you do your marketing, the less you have to sell.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
This is something that I absolutely agree with. Yes.
And it's just amazing to me how many small business owners and all kinds of business owners don't really give marketing the respect that I think it deserves, because they don't really understand that, or maybe they've had some bad experiences, or they didn't do it the right way and it didn't work, so they
Yes.
dismiss it, any number of things. But I knew I had to attract people, and podcasting was the new shiny object at the time, and people like shiny objects. So I would have my assistant send emails out to all the business owners that I would love to work with, have them hire me, and let them know that John Follis has started a new podcast called The Marketing Show, and we have an open slot available in 2 weeks. And if you're interested, we're talking to several other business owners. So if you can get back to us in the next 24 hours and let us know if you want to take that slot. And half of them said, "Oh yeah, sounds great." And remind me again, what's a podcast?
Oh. Oh, that's nice.
And I say, well, basically it's a way for you to talk about your business, your product or service for 30 minutes to a worldwide audience for free. How does that sound? And they all said, sign me up.
Oh,
The problem, Prit, was that because I was introduced to them as a podcast host, it was really challenging for me then to flip the script
Yes.
and suddenly say, oh, and by the way,
Mm.
I'm an award-winning, brilliant advertising marketing guy that could really help your business.
Yes, yes.
Hard to flip that script.
It is hard. As a podcast host myself, I think I understand where that comes from. And I think that's also where, so a little bit of behind the scenes for you guys who are out there listening. So John actually had done his entire research on me before we hopped on this episode. Like, he knew my entire journey, he knew the content, he had seen some of the content that I'd put out. And for me, that's a little unusual because so many guests that I have, while they do know a little bit about me, none of them really do a deep dive into my content. And it was really refreshing for John to actually hop on the podcast and actually know who I was as a person. So I guess that comes from his experience as a podcast host himself. So I really appreciated that. I absolutely appreciated the effort as well. So John, a little bit about, let's talk a little bit about businesses and what are some of the common mistakes that you see when it comes to marketing for business owners? I know we touched on it a little bit, that they don't understand fundamentally that the concept of marketing is about attracting, but what other mistakes do you see business owners making out there?
Well, we could spend the next 5 hours answering that question. Right. I think you know that.
Yes.
So to spare your audience from that, because that's a long podcast.
Yeah.
I'll just say the biggest mistake is that they don't realize that at a certain point they shouldn't be doing it. They should be trying to figure, if they're starting a business, their skill set is in something else that enabled them, that gave them the passion to start their business. Now, You know that marketing is a big part of any business, but that's not a skill set that most business owners have.
Yes.
And for them to suddenly and marketing is a rabbit hole. I mean, the more you learn about it, the more you realize you don't know.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's endless,
Yes, absolutely.
right? And you've been doing it for 5 or 7 years, I guess, and I've been doing it for about 37 years. And still, I just feel like there's so much that I
Yes.
could learn. So to think that a business owner is going to learn everything that they need to know to do it themselves, that's not the best use of their time.
Yes, absolutely.
They should really focus on, what their passion is. If that's their passion and they want to devote all their time, but it's very time consuming and it's probably more cost effective
Yes.
for them to find the right person. Now, that's a big challenge. And I think that's a big reason why many of them don't, because everyone is a marketing expert, right? There's so many people out there. And, they all pitch themselves.
Yes.
Many of them are really not so good at marketing, but really good at selling themselves as
Yes.
marketing experts, right? So because they're so good, it's hard to really know who to trust. But back to what I was saying, there's a very successful company. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Apple,
Mm. Yeah.
and Apple was started in 1976 by Steve Jobs, which I think you know, and maybe some of your listeners know who that is. Now, Steve Jobs, as you may know, is credited as the marketing genius
Mm.
behind Apple, right?
Yes.
But when Steve was 22 years old in 1976, uh, just starting out, he realized that to be successful, he needed to find someone
Mm.
that could really help him market Apple.
Mhm.
So, as smart as he was, he didn't do what a lot of business owners are trying to do now, and that's figure everything out themselves and be. He was smart enough to realize what he knew really well, what he did well, and then find someone. And he did not just with marketing. He did this, Steve Wozniak. He found Steve Wozniak because he knew Steve Wozniak was a brilliant engineer and tech guy, and that's how he built his business. He found people that were the best software engineers that did what they did, and that applied to marketing as well. So he hired a guy named Regis McKenna, and no one probably knows that name, but Regis McKenna was at the time a guy who had his own ad agency in California in the Bay Area, and also did marketing consulting. And Steve was impressed with him and worked with him for, I think, the first 5 or 6 years. So Regis and his marketing team and advertising team really laid the foundation, the advertising and marketing foundation for Apple, and I think is the main reason why people look at Steve Jobs as a marketing genius, because he learned everything from working with Regis McKenna, who really was a marketing genius at the time. And I can't think of any better example for a startup at the time. Apple was just starting up. It's 1976. No one knew who they were until they, started marketing their business with the help of Regis. So I can't think of a better case study
Yes.
than that for business owners to realize that their real challenge should be is finding the right person to help them.
I 100% agree with this. And for me, because I'm inherently a marketer first, before I became a business owner, I think it was very hard for me to make that mindset shift as well, that I was no longer just a marketer. I was also a business owner. There were other things that I needed to focus on with my business, that content creation, marketing was just one part of the wheel and not the entire wheel itself. So it took a lot of time for me personally to learn that. This was one of the first lessons that I learned as a business owner. And I definitely agree that a lot of business owners out there, I do see them struggling with marketing because they think they need to figure everything out. And instead, they could rather outsource that, or they could work to their strengths when it comes to marketing and content creation. Because I know when I first started out, I could not afford hiring someone. So I do know that there are some business owners who might be in that position. And I think that advice is figure out what you're good at and then just focus on that rather than trying to pick on everything. So I really liked that advice. So John, we've talked a little bit about, the biggest mistake that you see business owners making, especially when it comes to their marketing. But now let's talk a little bit more about marketing for business owners and how they can get it right. And more importantly, I think content creation and content marketing these days is very, very important. There's content creation everywhere that they need to focus on. So what are your thoughts, or what are your some tips that you can give my audience when it comes to communicating their message in a way that attracts their audience?
Well, that's where some creative talent comes in, I would say. And, this again, as I said earlier, Prit, this is my strength, both from a writing standpoint and from a design standpoint. Growing up, I was naturally talented because I was artistic and creative because of my mother growing up. So that was that became a natural thing for me. And then I honed that, of course, by going to Syracuse and understand how to channel that creativity in a way that works with advertising and marketing. The problem is that business owners who try to create this content, they obviously know their product or service, but they're probably not the best person to create the message, to try to get people excited about it, because that does take a skill. It does take a talent. And the problem with it is that if you don't do a good job at it, not only won't it attract prospects, but it could actually have a reverse effect.
Yes.
And if it's done in a way that's lame, it's gonna actually work against you and turn people off. Marketing is like a sign, a big sign for your business or service, right? And again, what you put on that sign, if it's going to be seen by people, is either going to attract people, do nothing, or turn people off. One of those three things. And the last thing you want to do is put something on that sign that gives people a poor impression of your product or service. And this is why it's hard for me to say, as a creative person, this is what I've done for business owners and clients for years and years and years, to say that, that they should be trying to do that part themselves. I would really encourage them to work with. Doesn't mean that they can't have input. Every client that I've worked with, it's a very collaborative effort. So, and they may not be exactly writing the headline or coming up with the concept, but they're part of the conversation that goes into, coming up with that.
And so if someone were to hire maybe, for example, you or a copywriter or someone who's a content marketer, what are some of the things that they need to look for to make sure that the copy is good and it aligns with their business purpose, their business tone, personality? How do they have that cohesion there?
So just so I understand, your question is, when they're looking to bring on a creative resource to work with, how do they know if they're good,
a good fit,
if they're a good fit? Good question. That's a very good question. And this is why I always stress for any business owner, before you hire someone, is there are multiple ways. I actually just put up an article on Medium, a blog that talks about the 7 ways to qualify a creative marketing resource. And there's multiple ways to do that. Probably one of the most obvious ways is to go to their website and see what they've done for other clients. Look at the work that they've done. And, anyone who is trying to promote themselves as a creative marketing resource should have on their website some case studies or some testimonies, show an example about what the problem was initially, what their response to that problem was, what creative marketing solutions they did, and then what the end result was. So that's one of the first things I did when I created my website, is have multiple case studies for anyone interested to look at that, because every client, as you know,
Mm,
every client situation is different.
mhm,
But if you can see how their creative, their strategically targeted and
mm,
creative marketing content helped solve the marketing problem and got measurable results for that client, measurable results. That's, I can't think of a better litmus test, really.
and
And
oh,
yeah, at
sorry,
the end
yeah,
of the day, it's, it's all about, every client wants results.
yes,
It starts with, get me awareness, but then awareness is not enough. You want
yes,
people to actually take the necessary action, whether it's to become a customer, to become a member of an organization,
yes,
if you're running an organization, to click on the buy button, whatever it might be. If you're a coach, to click on the coach me button,
mm.
you know,
But
and take
yeah,
that action.
one thing that really I find, especially when business owners hire consultants or marketers basically to help them out, is that they don't have a perception of the timeline. I mean, marketing takes time. Whatever the conversion of leads to sales, it does take time. So what is your thought process on that? How are they going to figure out the timeline for when they start to see results? Is it immediately? Is it going to
Yeah.
take time? How do they figure out when they should be seeing results?
Well, it's really interesting, because I've been on a number of podcasts, and I have a lot of hosts ask me questions, and everyone is looking for that silver bullet. They're saying,
Yes.
"Oh, this guy's been around for a long. He's a guest on my show, so let me find that golden nugget in his brain that's going to flip the switch. So all of a sudden, I'm going to take that advice, and my business is going to explode." Well, good luck with that. You can get that from someone else. I'm sure there are many quote experts out there that are going to tell you how what they do is going to quadruple your sales in a month, right?
Oh, you said it right.
Right. There's so many of those. And that, as you know, and I think this is true in anything worthwhile,
Mm,
takes a little bit of time. It's
yes.
like building a house, right? You can put up a house really quickly, or
Mm,
you can build it well. You've got
yes.
a choice. They
Yes.
they would, whenever we got assignments in our ad agencies, the account guys would come and they give us an advertising brief, and they'd say, "Okay, this needs to be done in 3 days." And our response was, "Well, do you want it quick or do you want it good?"
Mm. No, this is so
And
true. So true, John. I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
definitely face that, especially when I do. I mean, there's so much of, I wouldn't say bad content, but I just say very misleading content out there that says, oh, if you do this strategy, this marketing strategy, you will have results in 1 week and this will triple your sales. And every time I talk to clients who've seen all of these messages online, I have to remind them that marketing is a very slow process. I cannot guarantee the results, but what I can guarantee is a very stable foundation, a firm foundation that you can build on that will strengthen over time. And so I really like that you too. I mean, I'm a newbie basically. I've been here only for 5 years, but you with over 30 years of experience, the fact that you're saying this, I think it holds a lot of value, and it reinforces what I have been saying all this while. So absolutely really liked that and resonated with that as well.
and sadly, most business owners, they want things quick and easy
Yes.
and cheap, quick, easy, and cheap.
Yes. I really agree with this.
And so these quote experts,
Mm,
knowing that,
yes.
they kind of prey on that kind of
Yes.
mindset, knowing that people want fast,
Yes.
big promises, bold promises, all this stuff. So you use all flashy graphics with these outlandish claims and all this
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
So they get you to click on that initial button. But over the smarter ones, like
Mm,
the Steve Jobs of the world,
mm,
realize that they do the due diligence.
yes.
They find someone that they are really convinced or believe based on their research.
Mm,
I'm sure Steve, didn't make a quick decision when he chose to work with Regis McKenna. He did a lot of due diligence
I'm
on
sure,
him and
yeah.
was pretty confident that he was the right person, and then made a decision and allowed Regis to do his thing. You know,
Absolutely. Yes.
you know, he didn't try to control him.
Mm,
He just realized that Regis was the expert,
mm,
and he didn't doesn't mean he had to agree with everything that he
absolutely.
said, but he had to listen to everything that he
Yes.
said. So again, this goes back. It's really a challenge for business owners, and because our minds are conditioned by TikTok brain, right?
Yes.
We have TikTok brain, and everything is boom, 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 boom. I'd be surprised. Hopefully, people who started listening to this podcast 20 minutes ago are still listening to it. But I can tell you that probably a huge percentage of them, you know, stop listening after the first 3 minutes. So,
Absolutely.
so yeah, again, people, you have to look at the big picture, the long term, and make the decisions that are going to be better for your business over the
Mm,
long term. And
yes.
build it on a solid, like a house, right?
Yes.
Build it on a really solid foundation, because if you don't build it on a solid foundation like a house,
Mm,
um, it's not going to take too long for things to start, crumbling and breaking down. And when you have
absolutely.
foundational issues in your business after you've been doing it for a few years, then you are in some serious trouble
It's
when you've
very
got to.
hard to go back and
Yeah.
fix it either. I mean, at
It
that
is.
point, it is.
It
It's very
is.
hard.
Because you spend too much time going after, like, taking the fast, easy, going for
Yes.
that quick success, and you've made a series of decisions
Mm,
that are taking you in the wrong direction, and you've been doing
absolutely.
it for so long. Then to all of a sudden to try to reevaluate and go back and retool your business, like you just said, becomes more challenging.
Absolutely. And I definitely agree with the, the lack of attention span in our generation, especially. I think it's decreasing over time. And to want quick results, I have seen this mindset in a lot of people that I speak to as well. But, it's a very slow process. I mean, I have a book coming out, and my marketing plan for that is 3 years. I'm not kidding. I mean, yes, I'm taking it as a 90-day chunk, but it's a 3-year plan that I have for the book, and people don't understand that marketing takes a lot of time. It needs that continuous investment. You need to keep putting it over time and time. And if you're seeing really, really quick results, most likely there's something you have to probably check the process. That's probably a little bit of a red flag, if I would say, if you're getting like results like this within a day or
Yeah,
two
the
of
only the only
implementing.
way you're gonna really know about quick results is if, like, you have a sale,
Hmm.
coming up, and you say, it's like a 48-hour sale, and you're
Ah,
offering
yes.
products or something like
Yes.
that, and you're trying to get people to buy.
Hmm.
Other than that, there are not many business products or services where you can really even measure
Yes.
a quick results. You can measure clicks, you can measure views and stuff like that. But, unless you're in retail or selling products like that, within for a special window of
Yes.
time,
I
right?
agree. I agree. For like that launch sale period or those kind, yes. Those I agree 100%. And of course, the strength of your marketing does depend on that as well.
But there are things you can do that, can kinda test whether or not you're going along the right path from a marketing perspective. There should be kind of what you would call it. I'm trying to think of the marketing term, guideposts or landmark things where you can test the
KPI,
effect. The
performance
effect.
indicators.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I knew you'd come up with that. Um, so you can at least get an idea of whether or not the direction you're going
Yes,
into is the right direction, and those should be kind of put in as guideposts along the way to
absolutely.
kind of test the strategy, if you can do that,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. And always aim for steady, stable growth.
Yes,
As long as it's healthy growth, that's good. And I,
right.
I really liked that as the end point of our entire conversation, because I think that you really put across an important message that it's all about your stable foundation. That's the most important thing that you need to focus on, whether it is doing it by yourself or outsourcing it. You've got to take the time to hire the right resources, or if you're going to figure it out yourself, make sure that it is one of your strengths that you can actually utilize for your business. So I really like that, John. And if people want to come to you for marketing consulting, or find anything about you, talk to you, how do they reach out to you?
Well, one last point I want to make, because I think it's so important that business owners know how to qualify a resource. Um, when content marketing started to become in the vernacular, about 20 years ago, maybe, um, content marketing is a way to be found on
Mm,
Google, essentially, because that's how when people are looking for anything, Google is the place they go. So I came up with kind of a slang term that I call G cred,
mm,
for Google credibility.
mhm.
So this is another litmus test that you can have, and this is a long way of answering your question, how they can learn more about me. Um, if you're looking for someone who's a good marketing resource, the one way to test how good they are is to see what comes up when
Mm,
they pop their name into Google.
yes,
And if very little comes up, then I would really question whether or not this is someone you want to work with.
yes,
If you see a lot of content out there, then that's more of a reason not only to learn more about them, but to also realize that maybe they know what they're doing,
yes,
because
absolutely.
content marketing is a big part of marketing any kind of product or service. So again, to answer your question, if your listeners were to pop my name into Google or YouTube, like you, I have a ton of video work, because I think we haven't talked really about video at all. But I think video is and has been for years a very underutilized method for people to get the word out about their business, their product or service. And I've been involved with videos from the late 90s, and
Mm,
then started my company, Big Idea Video, 9 years ago,
mm.
2013. Yeah. So whether it's YouTube or Google, if you put in my name, John Follis, and you spell it correctly, I think there's one or two other John Follises out there that have some video, that have some content out there, but my content should come up. I'm the advertising marketing guy, not the lawyer from Texas. or the dead pottery designer from Los Angeles. Uh, he's got a lot of stuff too. He's an LA designer who very talented guy who died a while ago. So you might want to put the word marketing. I think that might help, or advertising or video or something like that in addition to my name. But that's how they could find out about me.
Absolutely. And I'm going to put John's links in the description box below as well. So feel free to reach out to John, maybe on LinkedIn or even through his YouTube channel. Ask him something about himself. Tell him one thing that you liked about this podcast episode as well. Do reach out to him, do connect with him. Thank you, John, for coming on my podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your invaluable experience as well as your expertise. It's been such a pleasure having you on my podcast.
Thank you so much, Prit. I really enjoyed it, and congratulations on your success in your business
Thank
as well.
you.
I'm really, really impressed with what you've done.
Thank you so much, John.
Okay.
And for those of you listening out there, thank you so much for listening all the way up until here. I hope you're staying safe, staying healthy, and I will catch you guys in my next podcast episode. Bye bye.